I very much feel like it's time to take a break from interpreting Genesis and go spend a little time with the Tao Te Ching. Genesis is complicated, and it's hard for people to find what I'm finding in there. It's where I am currently mentally exploring and extracting templates, but at some point I need to step back to gentler processes. There are much easier ways to get this template than Genesis, which is incredibly thick. So what I'm going to do is talk about the Tao Te Ching, and my name is Dan Paulson. Everyone, welcome to the channel. And I've done some videos on this before, but someone is looking at it right now and asked me some questions, and I wanted to cover it again because it's a good place to learn the template. I want to talk about a few things in general, though, that are at the layer that I am seeking, at the template level. We are so isolated that it's going to be difficult to find people to work with. One thing I want to say is that if we go to our God mode, go out in space, look at planet Earth, look at all the different things going on out there. You've got religions here, this one there, these ones look outward to Abraham, these ones look inward to yourself. There's all kinds of different beliefs. And if you were coming from outside, you would look and go, there's only one reality there. Why are these guys all over the place? What are they doing? Why are they different if there's only one reality from where we emerge from? And that's what we're looking for, that one reality. We're not looking for each one of those religions. However, we have probably explored those religions. I have gone through, I started out in a Christian home. I ended up in Buddhism, Taoism. I've studied Hinduism. And, without going into a lot of detail, eventually you look at enough things, you begin to see patterns, you see similarities. And that's what hooked me. I started seeing similarities between teachings across the board. That is what fascinated me. Not the teaching itself, but what are these things that are similar? At some point, I'm leaving everybody because they're studying Buddhism and they don't want to know about I don't care what Jesus teaches. What do you mean? I'm a Buddhist. Taoist, Christian, same thing. This crossover doesn't happen among the practitioners. It only happens among the seekers. Let me qualify that term, seeker. I'm going to go with the Jesus one because it's easy to see here, and that is to seek and knock for righteousness. That's not a verse, but that's what we get out of his work. You want to seek, it'll be open. Knock, it will be open. Seek, you will find. Knock, it will be opened. And there's the teaching. But we're looking for righteousness, which is what? We're looking for implicit truth. Bottom line. All right, so the analogous verbiage in some cases is very clever in that it can hook the conscious mind. This righteousness, what is right? Everybody's happy seeking righteousness, not interpreting the material. When we understand that all the verbiage that they're using is analogous, we know that righteousness is not the right term. We're seeking something in a mental process inside the mind, inside the memories, inside the personal experience. We're seeking something in there that is an interactive place that we can go visit. Places of joy, places of hurt, places of pain, things that we're going to have to go look at. When we interpret the term righteousness, that means getting to that bottom line there. What is that right there? What creates my life in the flow? What creates my life for me? And it's this massive accumulation of things that I've got inside that when we go for righteousness, we're going for that. That suddenly becomes interactive. And it is not righteousness. We're seeking bottom line reality, the truth of it all. What makes it work? When Jesus ceases to be a divider, this is what is happening. At some point in time, you realize that someone behind the scenes has got some templates created and that all of the religions and myths are housing this. When you talk to a Taoist, I posted a video recently showing where, and I'll get to it, but the Tao that can be told is not the eternal. That was the first one. And the idea among Taoism is that this is very magical and cryptic, and you're just never going to be able to understand it all. And I'm going to say they don't find the template. In Buddhism, the Tao Te, or the Dhammapada, it's the same thing. Jesus works. If you were to go to the Gospel of Thomas, Sermon on the Mount, Sermon on the Plain, isolate them out, you're going to find the same material in there. That is what I want. I want that commonality. Somebody, remember out in space, we're looking. There's one thing in there. It's that template. That is the one thing we're going after that nobody else is seeing. You go to talk to people about what you're doing with their material. You're going to find people saying, don't do that. You don't do that. You can't figure it out. You can't interact with it mentally like that. It's a spiritual sort of a teaching. I've been criticized by people who, not serious Buddhists, I'm talking Western people here that think that they are Buddhists because they study a little bit, or Taoists. I've argued with somebody recently about translations that he says that Taoism and Lao Tzu prove God. There's so much whacked out stuff out there with people not interpreting that we need to find something that is pretty solid. When we find the right thing, we don't argue about it anymore. We mentally interact with it and we go, oh, okay, I see what's there. It's no longer about here's what you should do and here's what you shouldn't do. Here's what you can't do. And you can't this and you can't that. Yeah, get the hell away from those people. They can't. They can be very aggressive. Probably the worst I see right now, sometimes my harshest experience are with Christian male and female that are very politically right-wing. Those people are the biggest assholes that I run into, that will scream and yell and violently tell you don't do that with the material. You just worship whatever. You're going to run into people that don't like what you're doing. And, okay, so that's there. But we're going to be finding something that they can't find. I get down clicks on the one where I say, hey, you can't understand this, for crying out loud, when the top Taoists in the world tell you cannot. That's like listening to Billy Graham or somebody tell you that you can't understand the Bible or something, that you can't decode Jesus's teachings. It's like, you can't. No matter how high you rise, if you're looking at it outward, you haven't turned it inward, you're not finding the common core. We're going to find the common core, and there's not going to be very many of us, and there's going to be a lot more people that tell you you're wrong than tell you you're right. We just have to know that what I'm doing is interactive, and what they're doing is supernatural and telling you what you can and can't do. We're going to go on our own. Now, that having been said, translations. This was originally in Chinese from 2,500 years ago. Mandarin, I don't know. There's something that is probably, our language changes. It's probably not even correct anymore. The book is old, and Chinese words and concepts do not translate into English directly. So as people are translating the book from Chinese to English, we rely upon them to do a good job. And they're going to do their best. What I'm going to suggest is that I use this a lot. I want to talk about why in a minute, and there's a problem with it that I want to identify. It's not a serious problem, but it's something I want to talk about. I've got that, but I also have 3 other translations here that I will use. I'll show some examples here, but when you read one verse from one translation and you go to another verse from another translator and you read those two side by side, they don't even sound the same in many cases. You're like, whoa, I better get more. I want to understand what all of them are translating so that I can get a better conceptual idea of what they're talking about. There's one translation I have that I want to talk about. That's this one right here. It's a lege. This one, you can see it's like a tabletop or a coffee table kind of book. It's got all kinds of, here, I'll just open up a big page. It's got all this wonderful artwork and the things in there. Don't use this one. This was given to me as a gift. I had it on the shelf for a long time. Eventually I look at it and the guy really messed up. What he did was he thought it would be so cool to make everything rhyme. So instead of trying to pick out the words that best translate from Chinese, this concept means this, he's leaving that and going, no, I'm going to find the best word that I think I understand. Then I'm going to go search around for some conceptual idea. It has to rhyme. I want it to rhyme. So he's not even sticking with the desire to remain as close to the original verbiage as possible. Wandered all over the place. Pretty book. Don't use it for study. I don't have to make examples. I've read through there and go, boy, he had absolutely dropped teachings in the interest of trying to make it rhyme over trying to make it accurate. So, I use this one predominantly. I find it to be one of the easiest ones to read and understand, and it's easy to carry around. And There is one problem with it. Stephen Mitchell, I love his work and his translations. He's a very caring individual. You can tell by his work. I don't know him personally or anything, but just the way he does things. I really appreciate where he's coming from. What he's done in here in a couple of places, though, is a gender swap. And that is in the interest of, what? Why do we always say men this, men this, men this? Why not woman once in a while too? Yeah. So he did that. And I don't know if I can find an example here right now real quick. But here we go, 21. The master keeps her mind always at one with the Tao. That is what gives her her radiance. The Tao is ungraspable. How can her mind be at one with it? Because she doesn't cling to ideas. The Tao is, anyway, it goes on like that. He'll switch back and forth between him and her to balance it up. That wasn't original. I want to offer a very significant cautionary note against doing that as well. That in some of the material, not in this one, but in some of the material, there is a mental hierarchy maintained, and the analog male and female is very crucial as being like conscious and spiritual. They're two different things. And that in the Jewish material, they're actually using a 5-part mental hierarchy where there's a higher being, our higher being, that God mode that we're working with that. The consciousness, that's where we judge experiences and feel life. The subconscious, the things that we have inside of us that we have stored, that really it's our accumulated perceptions of life experiences. And oftentimes that's hurt. Well, that's why we're interacting. We have problems. We want to go in and use this material as our guru and see what we can do to heal ourselves. And everybody's material has that in there. Jesus, Moses, all of that is in there. However, the shells are different. The carrier shell is different. That's what makes this one easier to read. At any rate, when I read through his right here, he hasn't violated that anywhere because they're not using that kind of hierarchy here in the teaching. And actually, there is a spot in there where it's like the keep the back up against the female or the male female, something like that, where he didn't touch it right there. The only place he did it was when it was like the master. I am the master. And what I have to say there is that, like all material, when this is the guru, you are the called person. If you are the one going through this, that is you. So it can say the master that means you. Are you a man or a woman? It doesn't matter. She, it doesn't matter. We can pull those out and just say the master, the called one, the person that's going on this path. That is going to square up with the other material. This one is not held in that long story form. This is very short verse, compact. And just as a quick example of that, as we go through here, we're going to see something like naming is the origin of all particular things, and that's it. Then it's going to go on to something different. If we go to the Bible, we're going to see the same lesson in there, except that it's going to be that man was given, he named the beast, these of the air, of the different things. He's naming the things in the hierarchy, in the mental hierarchy. So that naming is the origin of all particular things suddenly is made into a big, huge, here is all the things that are naming, and we're creating the structure in the background all at the same time. They're both teaching the same thing. One of them just says, yeah, whatever your personal experiences are that you decide the quality of, that's it right there. That's where it begins. And in the Bible, they're saying the same thing, except they're just saying it in an incredibly story, verbose way. But it's not simply verbose. It's not a waste. They're also creating a hierarchy in that. So that's where it gets deeper and Genesis becomes more complicated. It's harder to see inside of that one. I can see inside of it. I don't know how to explain it. I'm still working on that. Maybe it's good to have this break right here. Okay. What I want to do now is I want to actually do that a little bit. I want to talk about the Tao Te Ching and interpret some first verses for somebody to show an example of how I feel that when you work it out in the psyche and shift the analogs in this way, that when you read this, you get a certain self-healing process. That if you take the Dhammapada with different verbiage, but use the exact same process, only understanding that now the analogous verbiage is different is all, but it still fits the process, the hierarchy, the things going on, that now suddenly I find in here the exact same thing in the Dhammapada, the exact same thing that I find in Jesus material. What do you say to that? Is that the core? They're all the same. Okay, let me read the Tao Te Ching. And you know what? That's what we're doing here. In order to see that, we have to read a few verses and process them through. Only in this inner mental process do they align. It's just something we have to see. And right off the bat, the first line in the first verse is, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao, and the name that can be named is not the eternal name. Those are cryptic, but there is an incredible amount packed into them once you work them all out mentally. First of all, you take this verse, and it is this: treat the material like it's the guru. Like you just walked up to the master and said, my life sucks. I don't know what to do. Please help. How did I get here? It's going to start right here telling you how you came about. And yeah, let's go see that. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. What is the Tao? That is something we have to identify, and it's going to talk about it throughout the book in a variety of different ways. But the Tao basically is just the cosmic background, the ebb and flow of everything that we come from. But it's also the material itself and the understanding of it, the grasp of how to do all of this. It's almost like if you were looking at the template where there's a supernatural aid, that's what this is, what I'm doing right here. This is the supernatural aid, how to read the material, how to interpret the material, and I have interacted with the material. So that's how I know it experientially. So the Tao is this whole process, this whole concept, and the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. That's the line right there that tells people, or that has people telling me, yeah, this is some mystical, magical stuff. You can't understand it. It tells you right there that it can't be told. Those are analogous terms. We know that they're analogous. This isn't about the physical world. We can talk about this. What is eternal or not is our understanding, our grasp, our scope. We come from a place in the background, an energy place, but we are physical beings, and we learn by looking to the physical world. That's where we evolve to exist. So we grow up connecting to the physical world. And that in the beginning is like an empty void. The reason it's not eternal, though, is that you can talk, if you think about it, was there somebody magic at one point in time? I don't think so. This came from human beings. So are we saying that there's a human being that came up with something that the rest of us can't come up with? When you think it through, you go, nah, that can't be right. This was done by a human encoding something in here. So I believe it can be understood. He understood it. And he wrote an entire cryptic book on it. Can't understand it. Give me that. Get out of the way. All right. So the reason it's not eternal, though, is you can understand this all day long. You can say, all right, I understand that I was molested, and during that molestation, I was hurt and I was confused and things happened, and that I have that hid away and I'm ashamed and I don't want anybody to know because it's just too hurtful. And as time goes on, it's gone from I don't know what to do, confused kid state, to now I'm older. It's procreated into the point that I really have a lot of anger and hatred over it. It's grown bigger and bigger. But I'm finally at a point where I realize that I need to interact with that because it continues to emerge out of me. We'll get to that. It comes ahead in the material. We can know all of those things academically, but it's just academic. I know I have to face that stuff. I know I have to somehow change the state of the energy of the perception, because that is what is actually existing in whatever this field is of humanity and continues to experience. It's of a certain frequency that matches with a lot of other frequencies out there like it. So we're going to get triggered. We're going to keep having those experiences. And the only way to stop those experiences is to change the way it's stored up here. When we get to that point, it's still not true. It's still not real because you haven't done it. Not until you actually engage with the material, until you go look at the memories, until you start healing, because it's a personal process. I can sit here all day long. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. I can tell you all day long. You don't sit there and listen in the end and go, wow, I feel better now. Thank you. It doesn't work that way, does it? You got to go, oh, crap. I got to go look at this stuff. I got to deal with it. That's no longer being told. Now it's being engaged with. That is the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. This is going to emerge later, but naming is qualifying, classifying, deciding, judging. If Jesus, if he says, well, I'll get to it. I was going to jump to something from Jesus, but let me leave that alone for now. Okay, so there we have it. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. Yeah, not until you make it yours is it real. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. From this big void right here, anything is possible. It's all wide open. Once you start naming things, you limit something up here to what that is right there. You're going to create that experience and store that in an emotional state. That's how you see it. It's an emotional frequency. The unnameable is the eternally real. So we don't want to name life experiences. This is a point in time in our life where we're young, we're born. At first, we are not connected with anything. We are learning, we're becoming self-aware. We are having wonderful life. The unnameable is the eternally real. We're happy-go-lucky children, laughing and playing. We don't have a care in the world. The unnameable is the eternally real. Then the next step, naming is the origin of all particular things. Naming is something we do in the psyche. This is not about the physical world, it's about up here. When we name something, we are deciding the quality of this life experience. The way we judge people, the way we hear, the way we experience. Maybe we didn't have an experience. Maybe we were told those people over there are like this. And you're a kid, you're like, oh, okay. You don't know any different. You grow up believing that. Later you look and you're growing above that and go, I was just told that and programmed that. I'm letting that go. They're not that way. That was somebody's judgment that they gave me. I am not going to live my life based on somebody else's experience. I'm going to make up my own mind. Naming is the origin of all particular things. This is when we're having life experiences and saying, I hate that, I like that, I don't like that. We are now creating who and what we are. If we were looking in the Bible, this would be first sin. We are now having life experiences and losing that happy-go-lucky joy. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Analogs, it's not desire. Free from You hungry? Thirsty? You're going to desire those things. It's not about physical. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Desire is a term that is like holding on to. This is going to appear as a common theme. There's a punishment. There's a one that I use a lot. An anchored ship will not sail, which is the same thing. Or Buddha has one. The wheel follows the ox that draws the carriage. Something that's cycling around. Free from desire, free from whatever you're clinging onto, free from whatever you might have named. We're right in this section. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Now that you've named them, you call that a desire. Free from naming things, you realize the mystery. Life unfolds in the most wonderful ways. However, caught in desire, you see only the manifestations, grasping on to the things that you are, the experiences. And they could be good or bad. You can have love experience. We don't interact with that. We don't question that one. It's the hurt stuff that at some point we realize this is destroying my life. Whatever I'm carrying with me is a monster that I got to interact with. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Clinging on to what you're holding on to, you only see the continuation of it. There's our cycle right there. And this is a really good abject lesson in analogs. You look at that term desire, and if you don't dismiss yourself from that, you're going to get stuck. It isn't desire. It is not desire. That's an analog. When you look that's a physical thing. So when you translate it off of the analog, it is what you are holding on to. It is not what you are desiring. It is what you are holding on to. And we can be holding on to things. The problems are the things that we're holding onto that are memories that we don't want to look at. Yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. Cosmic energy, our decision, our perception, whatever we create in our life is coming from the same original source. It is our mental perception and how we store it and continue to hold it. All right, and that's not actually explaining it very well. What this is basically saying is that as we live life, because of conservation of energy, whatever we produce as far as our life experience comes, it's energy. We are producing life experience that's coming from the energy source, and that source is going to produce whatever is good or whatever is bad. Doesn't matter. When it works like that, that's the well of energy that you use in any way your mind says, whether you consciously choose it or not. This source is called darkness, darkness within darkness. I'm not quite sure how to unwrap that other than to say it sounds mystical, but it's darkness, darkness within darkness. You're going into a place that you don't want to deal with. It needs to be illuminated. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. The gateway right there, we're going to turn inward. Rumi, I've been standing on the lip of insanity, knocking, wanting to get out. The door opens. I've been knocking from the inside. Jesus, enter the narrow gate. And this is a common part of what would be called the monomyth template, and that is the crossing of the threshold. We would see it in Jason and the Argonauts is one that I use as an example just because it's available as a movie and easy to see if somebody wants to. But there's a going through, there's actually two of them in there. One of them I was crossing a river and meeting up with his old self, but also the sailing through the clashing rocks. We see it in Exodus with Moses in the going through the Red Sea. So there's these elements of a crossing, of an opening, of turning, going through someplace and leaving the past behind. The gateway to all understanding. So what we have, we're getting told to turn inward. The gateway is going to be a spot where we turn inward. Crossing the threshold is what this is going to end up being on a template. But you can see that it's sequencing. It's not following. It's following the human template pattern. The template is based on the way a human life comes about. That's why it can be similar from all over the place. People figure this out. That's, how I came about is the same way somebody from Saudi Arabia came about. We got trained, we got conditioned, we got told, we got beliefs. And if we'd been swapped at birth, we'd have been opposite people. It becomes mental. We know that. Back to the top, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. By the time we work that out in our mind, we can infer a lot from it. Remember, I said there's a lot packed in there. That also means it's mental, doesn't it? The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. That's academic. When it is experiential, that means the person has grabbed it and began working with it in their mind. So it's telling us it's mental right there, but you have to infer that by thinking it through and realizing, oh yeah, it does happen in my mind in order for it to be real. So it is a mental process. If you go to the Dhammapada with Buddha, the very first thing is all that we are is the result of what we have thought. Mental. Jesus, the blessed is the poor in spirit, for yours is the kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven. Poor in spirit. Spirit is that inner being. When that is poor, devoid of, blessed, the kingdom of God, the flow in life is good. We can infer from that, if that's what you have to do, it's mental. They're all nesting. Once we work it out in the mind and find a way to interpret it in a way that it becomes interactive for us, we realize they're mental. You don't sit back and look at them and wonder. You go, okay, I'm going to go look at that pain. I see I have to illuminate it. That I get used to things. And I get used to hating it. I get used to being afraid of it. I build a big wall, and pretty soon that wall is so fearful that if I can't tell anybody. The reality of it is, I get over mine and tell you, hey, I got molested. And people go, oh man, hope you're all right. The people that don't like you to say stuff like that are the people who are hiding it themselves. You can tell if they don't, if they're creeped out or don't want, anyway. It's difficult when you represent letting that stuff go. You have to find the right people to talk to. Anyway, okay, you see what I'm doing there with the material? Let's turn to the next page. When people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. When people see some things as good, other things become bad. We are now deciding the quality of things. Cain and Abel right there. Good, bad. We are making the divisions. Cain and Abel, the bad one, takes over. This one isn't saying that. This one is saying there is a duality. You have a life experience. I had this happen to me, and my neighbor had the exact same thing happen to me. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I understand. Yeah, I'm going to let you off the hook." Meanwhile, they're over there ranting, raving, calling the police, having all kinds of a fit, turning it into something big. Same event. How do you handle it? How do you create it? You're going to approach it with what you bring to the table. And left unchecked, it's going to continue to grow and build that way. It's going to continue to procreate. As we see things one way, there's another. I hate that. Yeah, that's just telling us that there is duality. Being and non-being create each other. Difficult and easy support each other. Long and short define each other. High and low depend on each other. Before and after follow each other. These are all cause and effect. And before and after follow each other. That's cause and effect. High and low depend. Long and short define. Those are balances of things. If we work that through mentally, what we would see something perhaps like if a group doesn't like gay, and the gay doesn't care, but then this group tries to hurt this group and take rights. This group stands up and they go, "No, don't do that." Then this group gets bigger and they get bigger and bigger. We see an escalation of things happening when it's left unchecked and people are allowed to just act out. Yeah, well, that's what we do. It's building this idea, though, as we're going along. It's teaching us how we came about and how life works. We're emergent from the background. We become products of the quality of what we experience in life and the way we hold it. When we name it, it continues to emerge. When we don't, we have a free flow in life. It all comes from the same place. It's good or bad. Therefore, the master acts without doing anything and reaches or teaches without saying anything. Things arise and she lets them go. Things disappear and she lets them go. She has but doesn't possess. Remember, these can say therefore. Things arise and the master lets them go. Things appear and you let them go. You have but don't possess. You act but don't expect. I'm changing these from her to you. When your work is done, you forget it. That is why it lasts forever. I'm unlocking a little bit of the analogs right there. This is about us. It's again, there's that shift that he put in. But that's a good time to remind us that that's us right there. We're that person right there. If you overesteem great men, people become powerless. If you overvalue possessions, people begin to steal. What we're going to see here is something that emerges in material. I don't know what to call them. Gotchas. They're things where there's a transition that happens. If you overesteem great men, people become powerless. You look at that and try to play that out in the mind, in the psyche. What are great men? Overesteem, ego. I guess if we go, people become powerless. It could somehow mean that, yeah, we lose control of ourselves because we've given too much, we've let something else overesteem great. I can't work this out in my mind. If you overvalue possessions, people begin to steal. This is about the physical world. It is not about the mind. I can't unwrap it. I don't see how it works in a very cohesive way. Watch, though. The master leads by emptying people's minds and filling their cores. Right there, it transitioned from outward looking to inward looking. These are gotchas that are going to come up in a few places where you read them and go, it's talking about the physical world, and then the response is something in the mental world. We'll see that happen. We'll see it in Jesus' work as well. Right in the Bible, you read them and go, it doesn't flow right. There's somehow that catches that. I see this here as I'm reading it and I'm going through the analogs and go, boy, that sounds weird. That's not about my psyche. That's about life. And we see it. If you overesteem great men, do we see that happening now? People become powerless. Yeah. But the master leads by emptying people's minds and filling their cores, by weakening their ambition and toughening their resolve. He helps people lose everything they know, everything they desire, and creates confusion in those that think they know. So there's a couple of parts there. He helps people lose everything they know. This is emptying out. This is seeking that emptiness. Poor in spirit, emptying out. What we're doing is helping people realize that the things that we've named along in life are the stuff that are hurting us, and emptying that stuff out is what gives us, really what happens and what the material talks about here. You get a different flow, you get a different way of life, you get a different grace of God. Your life changes, actually, is what happens. He helps people lose everything they know, everything they desire. Remember the desire, the first one? Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Is helping getting rid of the desire, the things you cling on to that are the derogatory things, the reason that we're hurt, the cyclical pain, and creates confusion in those who think they know. Those are the ones that come up and say, stop doing that. You're not doing, or that's not there. Meanwhile, you go, you don't see that. And they don't. And they will tell you stop. And you don't. Practice not doing and everything will fall in place. Once, there's the DVD, The Secret. There's that part near the end, Jack Canfield or whatever is like saying something like, that's just called so what. The real what is what you're going to do now. What they did is they just blew off everything that the masters teach us. That if you rid that stuff up there, life flows good. They said, leave it there, ignore it, forget it. Of course, they're also listing things as you go through there. They're pretty benign things. Nobody said I was beaten, molested, severely, told what a piece of crap I was, had to run away, lived on the streets. There was homeless. There was parents were alcoholics. Well, we got all those and more, don't we? That's pretty benign stuff. How can you, and they didn't, but if you infer this through, say somebody's watching that, some woman that's trying to succeed and she's hurt and she was raised, raped and molested repeatedly and beaten down. And they're being told, think ahead and just forget about that stuff. How the hell do you forget about that? You don't. You got to go after it. Practice not doing and everything will fall into place. Once we get all that stuff resolved, life unfolds without having to fight over the baggage we're dragging with us. Okay. This video went a little longer than I thought. That is how it's going to... Boy, if anybody wants me to keep doing the Tao for a while, I'll do that. It's fun to work through these like this and to think them through and to process them against one's own life. And what you're witnessing me do is just demonstrating how I do it in my mind. Again, it is not real. Right at this point, it is academic to anybody hearing me. It is only real when somebody goes, yeah, I see that. Give it here. I'm going to go and illuminate. I'm going to, one of the things that we have to remember is that we get used to things it's going to come up actually in the material very quick, but that we get used to things. And the more extreme things get and seem crazy at first, we get used to that. But the same thing happens with our fears. Pretty soon it gets to the point to where the wall is so big we cannot overcome it. But we're the ones that build that wall. Somebody on the outside that is understanding and on your side would be like, yeah, that's cool. We're animals. We're coming from there. Come on, let's go. Let's get up to the top of the mountain. Let's leave our past behind. We got something different going on. That is what we're looking to do, though, to emerge beyond our physical experiences that are normal. When we are starting out living life, we're not taught anything except go forth and experience life. And we do, and we make judgment calls, and we get in groups, and we participate, and we do things that later you are no longer a part of because you realize this is not, it doesn't feel good. There's groups, there's cliques. Yet, for most people, it does. Okay, so we're the ones going after the template and doing the more rare stuff. The way that the carrier is is hell. Taoism itself, if you don't find the template and you don't interact directly, but if you live a Taoist lifestyle, it's going to peacefully, gently bring you to a healing. Buddhism, same way. But they're inner looking. We know to turn them inward. However, if you don't turn them inward, there is a process of life, of gentle ease of life, of not grasping onto things, of not being so extreme, of learning to let go of things gradually that helps us live a better life. When it comes to something like Abrahamic religion, Judaism, that is also carrying the template. However, the analogous verbiage and the structure of it is such to simultaneously create a couple of things happening in the population. There's going to be control, but there's also going to be an ease. How do people live lives thinking there may not be anything? It creates something different in the population. And we have to get in their time. It's a very old storytelling is it. This is how this is our media of the day. The storytelling. And most of us don't read or write. We rely on someone to tell us the story and then we memorize it. You see any of those videos with like the Tibetan or the Islamic children that are, rotely repeating verses over and over again until they've got it memorized. That's what they're doing back then. We don't do that. We don't have them memorized. It's hard for us to see and unfold them. So that's what I'm plugging away at here, trying to figure it all out. But the commonality, once you find that, then I think that's what, to me, it's what gives credibility to the idea that this is the right interpretation. I can find that same inner core teaching in all of them. And, I used to think that, this will be easy to show, but I see that it's not. It's not hard to show. It's hard to see. A person has to be the right person at the right time in their life. Me listening to this now, if I'd have heard this 20 years ago, I wasn't ready for it. So it's here for when people do. Anyway, okay. Hope that helps with the Tao. We can grab any material and do it. And it's all fun. The short verse, again, if you were to take Jesus, the Gospel of Thomas, I've read through the whole thing. It has the material in it. Don't listen to people tell you don't listen to a Gnostic tell you or a Christian tell you what it is. We're looking at it as the template seekers. It's good. As is the Sermon on the Mount and the Sermon on the Plain from Matthew and Luke. Also, Buddha's Dhammapada and Tao Te Ching. The Dhammapada, I think, is a pretty good translation. It's not as difficult as the Tao Te Ching. But I think this translation of the Tao Te Ching, I think that's pretty fun to work with. Watch those gotchas, those things that looks outward. The Jesus one, I'm not going to go look it up and be that official with it on this video. You'll probably recognize it if you're familiar with his works. But there's a point in time where he's asked, how come you and your disciples don't wash your hands when the disciples of John and, whoever, somebody else do? Why don't you guys do it? And he goes on to answer them with something like, nobody puts new wine into an old wine vessel. Otherwise, the wine will be ruined and the vessel will burst. And it goes on. There's a number of things that go on through there. The cloak on the patch on the garment is a part of it as well. And you look at those and go, well, he didn't even answer the question. That's another one of those gotchas. And if you look at it, you see it's about the past. Why don't they wash their hands? It's really not important. The next one, though, suddenly transitions to inward looking. This is a part of the verse where you become the verse. I become the wineskin. The wine, the new wine is the new life. I can't put new life into my old self. Otherwise, it's going to destroy myself. It'll be ruined. It's not going to work. But you must put new wine into a new wineskin. So you must first purge yourself or have a new wineskin before you put a new life into it, a new life experience. Jacket, same way. You can't just put a patch on something that's there. Try to cover up what is there. You need to, that's not going to work. It won't function. So it transitioned right there from outward to inward, but you have to, it wasn't so direct as saying the mind in this case. You have to infer it by working it through and realizing that it all plays out in the mind anyway. At this point, we're all on board with it being in the mind, but those are the gotchas in there that you look at and go, why? Those don't even flow right. That sounds goofy. Yeah, I think they're there for a reason. And so far, when I see them, they very consistently they go from the physical world to the inner world, that they continue to make that transition from outward looking to inward looking whenever they are clues like that. I should wrap this up. Again, if you're going to do the Tao Te Ching, I almost recommend different variations. Here's one, Gia Fu Feng and Jane English, which is highly touted as one of the most popular ones, but right up front, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. So far the same. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of 10,000 things. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. What does that sound like to you when you hear that? This is 2,500-year-old or older Chinese. This one says, the unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. That one is saying name, that's the beginning. Now, if we understand that they're analogs, then we realize that it's still fine. Heaven and earth, earth is my being, heaven is out there. But the terms in popular times, I think, are too baggage ridden. I don't like them to see them there. Not that I can't unwrap them after a point in time, but I think people that are seeking, I would not have found what I wanted to if I was using that by itself. I had to use a bunch of different stuff before I realized, okay, that's not heaven and earth. That's something else. So you see that the terms that we're connected with can bring us someplace in interpretation that may not be the correct place because we're bringing modern biases with it, and we have to drop that. So if you're going through this, I think you have to do that. And, for people that say none of it can be understood, I think it is exactly supposed to be interacted with mentally. That is how it unlocks. And if you don't do that, you don't unlock it. It stays mysterious. It does. It's designed that way. It works in the population that way. Seems to. That's what I see. If you get far enough along, you're looking at it, you're going, oh, yeah, this was incredibly common. We just lost touch with it. I'm sure people know it. I know the Roman Catholic Church knows this. It's just too obvious. They've got it all over. Yeah, the New Testament is this material, hidden in different analogs. This is fun. I like this. It's a fun mental puzzle. You work through these and you make yourself every part of this that you can. We join spokes together in a wheel, but it is the center whole that makes the wagon move. That is about us. That's about me. We join spokes together in a wheel. Okay, there's a wheel that's going to go around, but it's the center whole, the hub, that makes the wagon move. Whatever we hold on to that causes the cycle to go around is what drives us through life. Next one, we shape clay into a pot. We are the pot, but it is the emptiness inside that holds whatever we want. We need to be an empty vessel. We hammer wood for a house. We are the house, but it is the inner space that makes it livable. Yeah. What do we have inside of us? Can we live inside of our own selves? We work with being, but non-being is what we use. It opens up. Make it about you. All right. Hope this was fun. Love one another. I'll see you in the next video.